My name is Candace. I'm the Network Community Manager with Swipe Out Hunger, and I'm happy all y'all could be here. Today we have a really exciting chat that is going to be led by our incredible Executive Director, Jamie Hansen, talking dollars and cents. I know we get a lot of questions about how do we fund the programming, how do we get our administration to help us fund the programming, and hopefully Jamie's going to lead with her expertise, but we have a couple of other generous folks that are going to share their time with us and their experience on campuses as well. And we'll go ahead and let Jamie jump in. Just so y'all know, chat is open. Please feel free to drop your questions there or in the Q&A. We will have a Q&A opportunity at the end of this call, and we are recording. So don't feel pressure to take good notes. We'll send out the recording afterwards for you to share with everyone on your campus. Jamie.
Especially that admin office, right, Candace? Thank you so much for being here, you all. Appreciate your time. I'm sharing my screen, so if I go too fast, you only have me to blame. But one of the things that Candace reminded me that I always forget to do is to tell people who I am. So let me start there. If I haven't met you before, my name is Jamie Hansen. My pronouns are she and they. I'm the executive director for Swipe Out Hunger, and I've been with the organization just over 2 years. And because my mission in life is to make Bill smile, even if it's sardonically, I have included the best picture I could find of myself, which is in a matching dress that my grandmother sewed, that my sister and I are rocking there on the far left-hand side of your screen. The side and high ponytail should tell you a lot about the decade. But also, I just think that this represents my personality best. So mostly, Bill, that's for you. You're welcome. But I grew up in sunny California. As I mentioned, I live now in Boise. And there's a lot of things that make up my life outside of my passion for the nonprofit sector. I've been doing this for majority of my adult life, pretty much all of my adult life. I really appreciate how community benefit organizational sector has evolved the charitable system to be one of impact and one of like people-centric behavior. And I'm happy to go on a soapbox with you on another day if you're interested in unpacking that. So in addition to being a nonprofit nerd, I'm also a potter. So I like to throw things on a wheel and then I promptly put them in a bucket and never fire them because I just like playing in mud more than anything. I have two abnormally large Labradors named Otto and Sherman. And if the mail person drops off my mail during our hour together, you will get a visit from them. So heads up. Sherm, the yellow lab there, is a mountain dog. And luckily we live in the mountains or nearby. And finally, I love backcountry yurts. And so a couple times a year, I go hiking back into a yurt and I read and I walk around and sometimes I go morel hunting and generally I'm just alone with my dogs wandering around the wilderness. So if you have any questions on how to do that, well, first off, invitation's open. Come on out to Idaho. But more importantly, Candace mentioned we have some guests with us today that have been incredible forces for good within our mission. I'd like to introduce Bill Guerrero and Brian Doherty. I knew I was going to mess you up, Brian. Sorry. I'll let you correct me later. Bill and Brian have been with us for several years, and I like to express both are my deepest thanks, I should say, for the work that you've done on behalf of ending college student hunger. Both of you have really unique journeys to reaching Swipe Out Hunger and your understanding of this work. But I also have to say thank you for both being kind of walking billboards for Swipe. Every time I talk to you two, you come up to me, you're like, I was talking to this person in Pennsylvania. I was talking to this person in Louisiana. Wherever the state is, whatever the campus is, you all are essentially out there advertising for Swipe. And I just want to say thank you. The more folks that we bring into the fold and have understand what college student hunger looks like today, what college looks like for college students in general today is always, I think, so critical to advancing our mission. Thank you. I also have to give mad props, Bill, to you for being in your second year of our leadership council. Bill has decided devoting a couple of hours a month was just not enough, that he also just needed to like help guide in our strategy and our initiatives. So thank you, Bill, for doing that. And Brian, who has been a corporate partner for 2 years as well, who has been funding our swipe grants through his efforts and has also been, like I said, a walking billboard. He joined us in Pennsylvania last fall and shared some of the cases that he's been experiencing, what he's been observing out in the field. So Brian, thank you for that additional time and effort and energy. So first, Brian, can you give us a little bit about Campus Specialties and Microfridge so people know a little bit more of who you are? And then Bill, I'll turn it over to you about your day job.
Sure. And thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to get involved with anything with Swipe Out Hunger. Uh, it was interesting looking at some of the names that were popping up in the different schools. We currently work with partner with West Virginia University, SUNY Oswego, Stevens Institute, Newman. So I just saw some of them running through. So it was good to see some familiar names there. So basically what Campus Specialties does is they work with colleges and universities across the country in conjunction with Microfridge, who's the manufacturer, to do programs where we'll either put a refrigerator in every room, or we'll do what we call a direct to student rental, where the students can actually rent from us directly. We'll deliver it to the room. So I've been involved with Microfridge since 1998 in some shape or form. I did the math on that before, which is 27 years, which is really kind of scary and dates me how old I am. And basically, we've really enjoyed this partnership with Swipe Out Hunger. It kind of goes hand in hand with us working with refrigerators and food and refrigeration. So we look forward to doing this for quite some time to come.
Well, thanks, Brian. Thank you, Jamie, for that nice introduction. Yeah, I'm just really blessed to be part of, the Swipe Out Hunger mission, to really help and foster it. As you said, Jamie, it's been about 2 years. And then, as crazy as it sounds, Brian, it's been about 25 years that we have been together in one form or another with our passion to support higher education. For those out there that don't know me, and what makes me really happy to be part of this is, I've been doing this for 25 years. Right now, currently, I am the CFO and Vice President for Finance Administration at University of Bridgeport in Connecticut, and in Bridgeport, Connecticut, no less, which is the largest yet poorest city in Connecticut. And my travels over my 25 years, has taken me through a lot of different campuses across the Northeast. My first time being introduced to Swipe Out Hunger was at Ithaca College in upstate New York. And that was not my initiative. It wasn't my initiative. I was just, really trying to support my team, my staff, and being the executive sponsor, was able to get it implemented and with an awesome team, did some really, really amazing things. So looking forward to telling more about some of those lessons learned to where I am today, about this really important topic that someone as a CFO and a long-term CFO, typically that's a gap between implementers. Hopefully I can help you out and really push that mission along. So thanks, Jamie.
Thanks, Bill. Thanks, Brian. I did forget, this is a reoccurring theme. Bill introduced Brian and Swipe Out Hunger. And you're going to hear that many a times. Like, it's those relationships that help fill in these gaps. So thanks for pointing that out, Bill. That was like the Easter egg hidden in here. And now
I
people
look
just
exactly the same, though. Brian looks a lot older.
Yeah, well, we both had a lot more hair 25 years ago. I know that. But one last side comment too, Jamie, and I didn't realize that you were going to be putting up pictures of your dog. And if you did, Bill and I would have put up pictures of our cats. We are devout cat owners. So
That is a fact, believe it or not.
I mean, the only thing I have to offer is there also is a 17-year-old cat laying underneath my desk right now. She has a little bit of dementia, so if you hear that too, it's just a madhouse over here. But I'm gonna say it's minus points for both of you. This is what it is. No offense to all the cat people on the call. Cats are wonderful. Because we know you're going to share this call with many folks within your administration and your operations on campus, we want to make sure that we start with some level setting. So for many of you, and I was looking at all of the campuses and the titles and the names that came in through the chat, a lot of this is going to feel very 101. And I want to say thank you for listening. And I hope that this is some information that helps folks understand college student demographics and what their living situations might be like today. So not news for you all on the call, but a traditional college student looks very different today than it did 20, 30 years ago. We've got a couple of sources that say that college students' average age is about 24 to 26, and that fluctuates obviously every semester as enrollment fluctuates, but that's a lot higher than a lot of the mindset we hear from external stakeholders around a traditional student, right? 18, 19, 20 years old. It's really important to note that many of the students are over 35, which means that their home life probably looks a lot different than a more traditional age student at 18, 19, 20. So these are not first-time students. These are folks who have exited for whatever reason they needed to. I know that I personally exited my undergrad about 4 or 5 times so that I could work full-time, make money, pay my rent, pay my utilities and food costs, and then save up hopefully a little bit of money to sustain me for another semester. So many of us are coming in and out of college just to make sure that we can keep a roof over our heads. Of course, half are their first in their families to attend college. That's probably not news to many of you all. And given the age range, you can assume that many of them are raising children in addition to going to school. But this last fact is the one that I talk about probably the most. One of the biggest misconceptions around college students is, again, in that more traditional mindset, that these are students who are full-time students and are not working outside of the school setting. And that is just no longer true. 80% of college students are also working. We've got some great student survey data that's coming in and we'll be sharing out in the next few months, but we're recognizing that a large portion of students are working more than 20 hours a week in addition to being enrolled. So how did we get here? Why do we have such a large population of students who report experiencing hunger? And we're still weighing whether or not this has changed after the pandemic started in 2020. But we know that roughly 1 in 3 college students experiences hunger. And we're looking at about 50% in the graduate school arena that may be experiencing hunger. So how and why are they experiencing hunger? And this is another myth that I like to make sure that I point out, that a lot of college students are ineligible for social service benefits like SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Programs, for a number of reasons. Even if they're income eligible, they might be working not enough hours. They might be on a meal plan that is 11 meals a week. I don't know about you all, but I definitely eat more than 11 meals in a 7-day period. But we also recognize that SNAP is a supplement. It is not intended to be a full food coverage for a month for an individual or a household. It is a small portion of what an individual needs to have nutritious goals met. But again, many students are ineligible, and that's even setting aside the enrollment process. As you all on the call know, enrolling in SNAP can be very difficult in general. Because you're going to school, many classes are during the day, in the middle of the day. And so you have to find part-time work or work that fits around your work schedule. That can leave you with low number of hours and low pay. That is what's available to you. Rising costs. The student share for tuition is growing. I'm hoping that Bill speaks to that as well. As a CFO, he knows that very well, ins and outs of that. But I want to focus mostly on this last one, the culture of student hunger. And you're going to hear some stories from Brian about this today. A lot of folks are talking about, they just ignore it altogether. This doesn't happen on my campus. We're a private 2-year institution. The students that come here have plenty of resources. We know that hunger exists on every kind of campus across the country. But the other element that we hear from people is that it's expected. And this is something that I really want to hammer home. We expect hunger in a certain demographic. How disappointing is that? We talk a lot about how people experienced hunger when they were in school and they survived off top ramen alone. And so others should have to go through that same process. It's not something that I would want somebody to experience, regardless of their age, their households, or any other defining characteristics. So let's battle against that. That brings us to the topic here today. Why are we talking about contracts? And I'm going to blame Brian and Bill for this, because in talking with both of them, they brought up the amazing stories that they have been a part of that really helped create this win-win-win situation. So we've got student success as the primary win and the center of all of the decisions that many campuses make, certainly we as well. There's cost savings opportunities or the ability to build a positive relationship between the vendor and the campus. And that can mean that there's a lot of creative solutions that might be possible. So again, Brian, I'm not going to like blow your spot here. I'm going to let you shine, but look for some of these themes as Brian and Bill are talking here today. So I am delighted to turn it over to Brian first. And I think, Brian, when we were building this presentation, one of the elements that we pulled out that was surprising, I think, to me and the rest of the team, is that in the student survey respondents from last year, 17% reported a lack of nutritious food access due to a lack of refrigeration. And I thought that was fascinating because here comes Brian with some solutions.
Yeah, when we were talking last week about that too, that kind of shocked me coming out of the survey. I just didn't think of that as a barrier to like nutrition and food and that, and it kind of set me back a little bit, and it made me start thinking about when we first started talking about food insecurity years ago. But Jamie had asked me to go back and talk about a couple of the examples of things that we've done over the last year or so, maybe 2 years. But to go way back to where my first introduction to food insecurity came was at Misericordia University, which, if anybody's not familiar, that's in the northeastern part of Pennsylvania, not too far from where I am. And I remember walking in to meet with AJ Nudo, who's the head of Residence Life. He's still there. He's a great guy. And we're walking down the hallway, and I said to AJ, I said, "Oh, did you open up a new convenience store?" Because it was a new store that hadn't been there the last time I had visited. And he said, "No, actually, that's our food bank." And it just kind of hit me wrong. Like I just didn't understand. It was like, okay, I'm out of college quite a few years, but when you go to college and you're living on campus and you have a meal plan, you get 3 meals a day and all the snacks you want and anything else you want, right? That's, I think, the general consensus of anybody that you talk to. So we walked into the food pantry and spent probably a half an hour just discussing it. And it was shocking to me because, where Misericordia is located, it's in Dallas, Pennsylvania. It's a pretty affluent town. Granted, most of the people that are going there are not from Dallas, but it was just stunning for me to understand the broad need for pantries and how many students are like using this pantry on campus. So it started me thinking, and I started talking to the person who's the president and CEO of Campus Specialties about what can we do, what can we bring to campuses that make sense. And it just goes so hand in hand between refrigeration and food and that. So we started talking about finding a group, and that's where 2 years ago we ran into Swipe Out Hunger. And it's been, for me, it's been a real education, and to learn more and more about what's needed on campuses it's stunning. Like there's just stories that pop up every once in a while that just kind of tug at your heart, for one, but secondly, you don't realize that there's so much need out there. So a couple different examples that I have here are some things that have gone on over the last year. And some of them have been, some of the things that we've done have been inside the walls of Swipe Out Hunger in a sense with partners, and some of them have been outside of that. And frankly, it really doesn't matter if you're working inside, the confines of Swipe Out Hunger or outside. The needs are all the same. So I guess for this group, these three stories that I'll get into might help you understand a little bit more of what you can do to partner with your vendors on campus. And I can almost assure you that the discussions that you'll have with your vendors about food insecurity and what they can do to help, they'll be more than happy to jump in and, help you out. So first example here is Georgia State University down in the Atlanta area, in Atlanta, downtown Atlanta. And we did what's called a one in every room install a year and a half ago. So basically, we come on campus, install one unit in every room so students don't have to bring anything on campus, helps the parents out, helps everybody on move-in day. One of the things that we were struggling with is the concept of servicing the account. We're based out of Scranton, Pennsylvania. We do have a lot of reach around the country, but Atlanta is not one that we have a core amount of accounts. So we started talking with the director of residence life and housing, who's spectacular, and we asked her about if we helped you out with like a grant, would you be able to help us out with doing some servicing of the account? And she was thrilled with the idea. And we first offered up that we would make a donation, a pretty good donation to the food bank. And she came back to me with, well, would you mind if it was donated to the emergency assistance fund instead? And the reason that she wanted it to go to the emergency assistance fund is that they would have more flexibility to send the money to places that were needed. So they could send it to the food bank or they could end up using it for something else. And just by chance, I was on a phone call with her about a month ago, and she got into that the money that we had donated was used towards for a bunch of students who were displaced by a fire living off campus. And she got into some of the details of what they had gone through in that. And it was, again, pretty heart-wrenching. And, the students didn't have the financial means to move somewhere else on quick notice and that. So it ended up being, a great benefit for the school and for the students. Another example, a little bit different approach to how we can help out is James Madison University. And when I think of James Madison University, and again, it's just off the top of my head, I think of affluent. It just sounds affluent. It's James Madison. And when we got talking with another director of housing there, the more we had discussions about paying commissions and what we could do financially to pay back for the amount of units we're putting on campus, the conversation changed quite a bit. And it changed when I brought up Swipe Out Hunger and what we were doing with the organization. And this particular gentleman ended up, over a period of weeks, we came to a different agreement where they wanted to be able to serve people who couldn't afford to rent a fridge. So what we ended up agreeing upon is that for every 15 rentals that were done on campus, that we would donate one for free. And the school has the discretion over where those units are going. And obviously they have some insights into different students' financial situations. So last year, there were 90 units that were donated, which frankly, I think were more than what they needed and what was requested. But, they ended up using them all and it worked out great. So a third situation that we ran into is Hofstra University. So Hofstra has been a long time partner of ours out in Long Island. And we had gone through a contractual cycle of 5 years, and we started talking about what the next 5 years would look like. And one of the things that was important to the school in initial conversations was possibly making more commission. And that's a very common thing in our business. And, whether you're doing laundry or micro fridges or whatever it might be, commission structures are important. The more we talked and the more we sat down, and it was great. It was like one of the first conversations that I feel like I sat down in person with somebody like after COVID. And we started talking about the priorities of the school and a new dean who came in. And one of the priorities of the dean was food insecurity, just by chance. And we started talking about like, what could we do rather than say increasing commissions, but increase services to the students. So we came to this agreement that we would give a donation, which we have been doing annually, to their food bank. But on top of that, we're also donating refrigerators. So we're setting aside a pretty good amount of fridges that can be used at their discretion if they run into a situation where they know a student's struggling or whatever the case might be. There's a couple stories that have come back to me from the people that we work with at Hofstra, and it's again, it's a little heart wrenching. You know, they kind of stumble across. It almost seems more times students aren't asking for the help. It's almost the school gets made aware of a situation, and you know, so these are all different situations, but they all have the same theme, and it's all about just trying to help people. And you know, every time I go and speak with the school, part of my discussion now is food insecurity, uh, not necessarily our relationship with Sight But Hunger, but it always comes up, and you know, hopefully we help out the cause. But it's really it amazes me that I have not walked onto one campus, no matter what, you know, level of affluence the school has, that it's not an issue. It's an issue everywhere. And you know, we're looking to just kind of help out where we can and keep growing and keep helping Swipe Out Hunger grow.
Ryan, thank you so much. I have to point out a couple of things that I've really been grateful for in our partnership, and in these situations, these case studies that you've brought forward. Sometimes nonprofits and you know, programs on campuses get approached by corporations for partnership to further that corporation's agenda. And what I really admire about you all is you have brought a unique solution to every campus that has different kinds of needs, right? A campus that has a lot of folks living off campus might benefit more from the emergency fund versus the, you know, donated in dorm room rentals. So what you're really listening to for what that campus is trying to achieve, and then meeting them where they're at. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for prioritizing the issue over the sale. But I do hope that like this has opened up doors for you as well. So Brian, thanks for that.
Thank you.
Oh gosh, we have to turn it over to Bill. I'm sorry, everybody. He is glorious, even though he likes cats. But I put this little tidbit on your opener slide, Bill, because I think that this is something that highlights what Brian was getting at. Now, regardless of the campus, there's student hunger. And we're constantly looking at this number of undergraduates, graduates, different demographics within the college system. But in our campus leader survey, the students that reported utilizing the services, it was 30% of them said at least half or more of their food is supported by these anti-hunger programming on campuses. And so I think, you know, as a good kind of intro into your, you know, slide is, what do you see on your campus? Does that feel about right statistically, or are there other kind of polls you see?
Yeah, you know, that's a great stat. It should really, I don't know, kind of like the way Brian was introduced as well, you know, visiting Miss Concordia and you know, his other campuses. That stat should blow you away, but now, unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me. Going back to kind of my background, where I was first introduced to, you know, the concept of food insecurity, we're talking probably about 2018. I never really thought about it from my own personal life where, yeah, you know, growing up in a certain way where I know my mother struggled to try to find food and get it on the table. And I know in my undergrad, I had to work in food services so I can get food and do those kind of things. But I didn't really think of it more than that. There wasn't any more, you know, any more or less stigma related to it. But when I got to Ithaca College, 2018 it was, uh, you know, certainly the area that gets a lot more focus than not is the concept of food pantries. You know, it's pretty, uh, you know, it's a great opportunity for photo ops, you know, for senior administrators, you know, presidents, board of trustees, fundraisers. It's a great opportunity, but it's really the execution of it, and it's not the only solution of it. So, you know, thought about that with the food pantry that I mentioned before at Ithaca. Then one of the leaders at the school in charge of, you know, student support raised the idea and was really worried and cautious to bring the idea of swipe out hunger to me. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, why are you so hesitant? Why are you worried about it? And she's like, well, this may cost some money, or this may upset a business partner. And I'm like, but does this help us recruit students? Does this help us keep students? And she's like, absolutely. That's where that 30% comes in, that I was blown away with, from a relatively affluent school. But one thing that I have on this list is, the recruitment of students, retention of students, but retention of employees. I was blown away at this early time where, we would get the food bank come and deliver food. And, some of that food would eventually get to the food pantry. But it was not just students, it was employees. People don't even realize that your own employees. I know the salaries of all the employees and so forth. And imagine someone making $45,000 and having 4 kids. Where they, and so I was blown away about that problem. And so in really trying to package it all together from an institution perspective of food insecurity, not just a food pantry, and not just swipe out hunger, uh, was really trying to say, like, hey, how do we kind of push this message even further, and trying to figure out why was that person so afraid to come see the CFO and ask for support, and how do we remove some of those barriers? And so that's where I really appreciate Jamie. Regardless that I like cats, one of the things that you mentioned was one of my Ithaca experiences, which I never knew the word, and you mentioned it, was yurt. I never knew what a yurt was. But here's the thing: the why we can joke around about cats or dogs or yurts is, believe it or not, I had budget discussions as I built the budgets for our campus, and I had faculty that wanted yurts up in the woods, and they can use them for whatever academic, for classes. I mean, people would actually say, hey, we could rent them out and someone could stay over and whatever. And I was like, okay, so we want to spend 150 grand on yurts versus supporting a program like this, supporting food insecurity. And so where I always try to educate my community is about choices, and about choices about funding. And so that's where I get the win-win-win. And I know you put the great slide up there about win-win-win. Win for, obviously students. We need students to graduate. As you mentioned, right now, higher ed is having a real big challenge right now. It's hard for people to truly, truly understand how difficult it is in the higher ed as a business. Schools are closing, schools are merging, schools are just trying to manage declining enrollments. And so it's really, really hard to get a student. And so when you do get a student, we should be fighting so hard to keep them there, and let alone get them to graduation. And so this is just one, I always say, one arrow in the quiver to kind of support them, because our students, just like, and I mentioned choices in a budget process for my college or university, is students are making choices. And just like Jamie, like you mentioned in your background, people are making choices on when to come and go in college. They're going to they need to leave college because they need to save up some money for food, to pay rent, whatever it might be, childcare. And so they drop out for, it could be one semester, it could be multiple semesters. And I work with a lot of those students, trying to get them to get their degree, because they wait, you have all this money out there, either in loans or whatever. You got to get your degree. And so they make choices. Students are making choices of, do I save money, whatever that is, to get my next meal, or for my transportation to get home? And so the choices go all over the place. And a lot of that's called, really, when you look at your cost of attendance, and Jamie and I know about this, we did a Nakubo presentation on cost of attendance and the impact of cost of attendance. My school cost 60 grand, and that's all with food, room and board plus tuition, costs 60 grand. That's kind of normal. Unfortunately, not many families can actually afford that. And it's hard for administrators like me, let's say, as an example, let's say highly compensated, or board of trustees that are, let's say, in theory, live in a different world. It's hard for them to kind of understand this challenge of supporting students with, in essence, let's say, free food, right? And they're like, oh, people are just going to take advantage of it. They're going to take advantage. I'm like, that's not the kind of world we live in anymore. That is not the world. And so I'm lucky at times that I am what you would call an executive sponsor. And hopefully I'm approachable. Hopefully people bring ideas to me to help me try to keep my school afloat. And so when I look at this chart here, Jamie, and everyone here is, um, there's a negative to it still. In some view, is as I mentioned, that people are just going to take advantage of the free food or a free swipe. There's a negative from business partners. So if it's all your major food service companies, and they're all great, but there's a challenge where it's if it's Compass, Aramark, Sodexo, Parkhurst. I know you got some, you got all different companies. And then even with your card companies, your card companies like Seaboard and Blackboard, which are basically one company now, is these partners have the ability and capacity to really, really help this. And it's not just through the school. So I really think the win is we can really help our students. I really think we can help our business partners. And I really think we can help with our students because it doesn't help us financially as an institution. It doesn't help us financially if a student drops out, like Jamie did for a period of time. We need to keep those students there. So what would I rather have? Missed out of tuition for a semester, or I don't know, 10 meals and whatever that equivalency is. Let's just say that's $70. What is the dollar difference between a semester of tuition versus $70 of some swipes that were donated, let alone by one of their fellow students? And so I always try to argue and debate those kind of that math to really get support. And so luckily, obviously with my name, my title, it's a lot easier as an executive sponsor. Can I say at Ithaca College, if I wasn't there, would it have been implemented? Yeah, would have been a challenge. Would have been a challenge, unfortunately. And so even where I am today, I still get some minor challenges, pushback. And so what I offer up is for, as I mentioned with for institutions, no doubt I didn't touch upon external relations. It can be used as a fundraising tool. You can get $10,000 from a donor to help support this if it's sold correctly. Why this helps. If it's sold as recruitment, retention in that kind of vein, but for business partners, as you're managing, and again, I looked at kind of who was attending, Jamie, and I don't know who, like the bureaucracy or the hierarchy in higher ed is like, okay, do they have to go to the people that are on this call? Are they going to the auxiliary director? And then as auxiliary director, then going to, I don't know, maybe the CFO or somebody else. I mean, there's so many levels to try to say, hey, I just want to implement this. But here's your times for if there was a business partner on this call, not Brian, but if there was a business partner on this call and you're looking for a generation of business and you're creating your RFP, there should be a page in that response to the RFP response of your partnership with Swipe. And it should be in the contract that we are going to donate, not the student donating it to their peers, but also the business partner saying, hey, we support it, but also we will also donate, I don't know, whatever, 300 meals per semester. Because the business model of it is actually, it's all about missed meals. That's the business model of these food service companies is missed meal factor. Believe it or not, they actually don't want you to eat. They don't want you to go in there because the missed meal factor is how they save money and how they lower their food cost. And so the math is actually very, very easy for them to add 300 free meals or whatever. And frankly, that last button or bullet on the bottom, ESG metrics, it'll show them that they are partners into the community. And so ESG, if you don't know what it stands for, environmental, social, and governance, but basically it's like you're a good company scorecard. Like you're really trying to do the right thing. For me, I like to have it in the contract to confirm you're going to do the right thing. I don't want to do it after the fact. Like, hey, we should really do this program. And then they get all really upset that they're going to lose money. And then for renewal business, I would say for business partners, that would listen to this, be proactive. Be proactive before it gets to the renewal business. Say you want this. Say you want to do this, because that will make the renewal process so much easier. So much easier because you are now a true partner, not just dollars and cents, meaning not just about your profit. You really want to help the students stay in school and graduate. So, and then finally, the card programs, hence the name Swipe. The card programs, and who knows what it's going to be in the future. It may just be mobile app, maybe a mobile app ultimately. So it's not technically your student ID anymore. And, but those card program providers, they're still fighting for business. And so they should also do something to support this program, because ultimately, if you're working in higher ed, you got to do whatever you can to support our students. So I just think this is a great story that we need to continue that fight to bring it out there. So uh, that's all, Jamie. I don't want to take up too much more of your time.
I like what you highlighted for me though, because I feel like I learn something new every time we talk about this. One, find out when contract renewals are and start building a proactive plan to get in front of the negotiator before they come up due, right? See if you can find an executive sponsor. Is that what you said, Bill? Or they
Yeah,
sponsor to help
and that's
you?
where it's tough. The executive sponsor for me, let's say it's the CFO, it could be the auxiliary director, but then when you find out who actually has signature authority, that's where all of a sudden you're like, yeah, this is a slam dunk. Brian's been through this many times. You think a deal is a slam dunk, and then it gets to some stiff like me. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know if I like giving away one free micro fridge for every 15, or I want a higher commission rate, that kind of crazy stuff where it means nothing, as opposed to keeping a tuition and a student in their tuition. So yeah, Jamie, that's the executive sponsor. Need to have them.
But I love that language, right? Like, here's the cost of losing a student. Here's the cost of negotiating some benefits. Like, that is such a great phrasing. Well, I know we only have a few more minutes of your time, Bill, before you have to sneak away to the next meeting. So I'd love to open it up to questions. And I see some folks have been putting things in the chat. Thank you so much for doing that. I think also I want to open it up to reverse questions. So Bill and Brian, if you have any questions for the partner network that joined us today, we talked about refrigeration. Bill talked about like dining provider contracts, but maybe you see other opportunities. This is to the network or to everybody. Where else are there contracts that you might be able to prepare language for or seek out a sponsor for? I think you mentioned the cards, or like the software service that connects the card swipe or backend.
Yeah, I would say another one is broadliners. So broadliners are the ones that deliver your food. So that's your Cisco, your Performance Food Groups. That's your US Foods. Those are your three main broadliners that, and more specifically, those are the ones that I would reach out to for self-operated colleges or universities. So that means they don't work with Sodexo, Aramark, or whoever, or Compass. So broadliners like those three, they are more than open to help support their students.
Good one.
I think one thing to keep in mind when you're looking for support, I think most companies are willing to do anything they can, especially for something like this. You just have to keep in mind sometimes, like, there's companies like LG, in a sense, that's partnering with us, that has a very large, financial strength, if you will, versus companies that are smaller. And sometimes, they can't give as much, but they're willing to give. And I guarantee you that if you're reaching out to these companies, when Bill was talking, something ran through my head was that we get solicited, as does any other vendor, frequently for, would you donate to our football team, whatever. And it's usually a sports thing. And what's very frustrating to me is that it's usually somebody calling who's not from the school, that's from a contracted company that's getting a percentage of the money that's being collected. And you find yourself in some ways like, okay, how do I turn down donating money to a football program that we work with the school? But I'll tell you, when you get a phone call about something that's related to like Swipe Out Hunger or food insecurity, that's a different conversation. And no offense to the sports programs, but I think most of them are doing pretty well. right now, especially the larger ones. But I think a lot of times you just need to ask. And if you ask, I think people more times are going to be willing to help than not.
I agree. What's the worst they're gonna say? No?
If you don't ask, you'll never.
That it's always no, an automatic no.
Yeah.
I do see a question here in the chat that I'd love to pitch to you all really quickly. Thank you, Brandy, so much for writing this down. We've got a community college, no campus living, limited campus dining, so no meal plans. I imagine, Brandy, maybe you might clarify this, that you've contracted with like a private company to do like fast food or like a, you know, a limited service food plan. So suggestions for this scenario, I can see asking BOT to advocate for students and asking current vendors to donate. Thoughts? Thank you, Brandy.
Randy, great question. No doubt slightly different business model, depending on how many students that you have. At your community college, a lot of times, even though they don't have meal plans or on-campus housing, the population is actually pretty large. It's pretty large. And so I would assume you have actually a card, a student ID that can swipe for something, but I would say no doubt reaching out to the, through your, I would say advancement office. That would probably be the best way, unlike what Brian was saying, sometimes when they're looking for solicitations and so forth, but hopefully your college has maybe a 1 or 2 person fundraising or advancement office. And I would just pitch the initial ideas like, hey, we have a lot of our students that are struggling. And sometimes it's off hours. They're coming in at 6 o'clock for their class or wherever. And I would just pitch the idea to them, and maybe they have some brainstorming ideas on how to get some external funding. Some of it might be, for a community college, a lot of times you have some county or local support that could, apply for some other grants as well. And then you can go for individual, donors, maybe from a board of trustee or, some other folks. But I would go to your advancement office. Hopefully you have that initially. And then it's easier once you start having a volume. If, like, hey, we have 15,000 students, then you can really, really justify that with some of your business partners that could potentially say, hey, you know what, for every whatever, almost kind of like what Brian was saying on the food side is how much, based on a percentage of sales, we can donate this much, to students. So really, really good question. It just demonstrates that it's never apples to apples all the time.
I appreciate that. Maybe find a champion in advancement and a champion in admin as well, or finance.
Yeah.
I love asking board of trustees to be advocates if you feel as though that they can adequately represent your needs and your hopes. All right, Bill, I know you have to jump off. I have one more question here, but feel free to jump off if you need to.
Okay, let's see.
Farron here said, do you have recommendations for colleges where food services are all in-house rather than contracted out? They provided an example, sorry, Farron, if I misgendered you, of not being a partner with Swipe anymore because the college discontinued the Swipe system and decided to do roundups for tips for the student staff in the campus cafe. So maybe something similar of like, if we don't have a dining provider on our campus, how might we go about getting in-kind and finance support for our anti-hunger programming? And it sounds like, Farron, you might also be working through educating your administration to have them understand like that hunger is actually existing on your campus as well.
Just one quick comment here, and Bill's much more versed on this type of stuff, but I thought it was interesting to read from Farron about we're not campus partners with Swipe Out Hunger anymore because the college discontinued our swipe system. And if you kind of look at the examples of what we've done, nothing's had anything to do with swipes, and Jamie can attest to it. We campus specialties, we have not done anything with swipes. In general, it's been either donations or in-kind donations and stuff like that. So I don't think the swipes limits you to going down different paths, if that makes any sense. I could see the school still being very involved. I think Swipe Out Hunger is just the tag phrase of swiping, but it has so many different meanings, So I think you could almost circle back and bring the organization back on campus just in a different format than swiping.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
another really, sorry, Jamie, go ahead.
No, no, please.
Yeah, another great question. Another great question. I mean, even just that's, you know, idea of whoever manages your merchant processing, where you're talking about roundups or tips or whatever like that. And again, that's someone on campus that controls the point of sales. And so that sometimes that's in IT, sometimes that's in food service, sometimes it's a combination. Sounds like a really, really awesome idea. Really awesome idea. And obviously, you have to get someone in accounting together to confirm that bucket of money that then gets allocated at the end of the month that you can reuse for your program. Really, really good idea. I think you started off at being self-op versus contracted out. Frankly, self-ops, a lot easier, because if you have a good relationship with who's the general manager, that is an employee of the college, hopefully they witness, they see, they understand the challenges of food insecurity, that they'd be a tremendous partner, tremendous partner. Frankly, they should be, you know, almost the one being your champion. And so I think it's easier outside of having a contracted partner. So I would
Mm.
just reach out to that general manager. That's typically the title of the person that's managing your food service. So, all right, Jamie, I got to run, but
Yes.
thank you for the
Thank you, Bill.
opportunity. And honestly, if there's other questions that come up in the chat and you just want to shoot me an email, glad to answer them.
Appreciate that, Bill. Thank you so much. Good luck at your board meeting.
Okay. Thanks.
And
Goodbye.
Farron, thank you for the clarification in the chat. I think those creative ideas that you're trying to generate, I have a lot of empathy for your position, because I understand once you've funded a role, people can feel as though they can wash their hands of the situation, but we all know that it kind of looks differently anywhere. So I do want to extend the invitation to reach out to our team, especially our programs team like Candace, to see if we might be able to learn a little bit more and see if we can help generate some more creative ideas for you. Thank you so much for typing that out, Farron. And Candace, I think I'm turning it over to you for what's next.
Yes, Jamie, thank you. And Brian, I know you're still on the call, so thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, we only have a couple minutes left, so I want to make sure folks know. Heard you shout it out, but if you're on this call and you're not currently a partner, but you've liked what you heard or you're interested in more support around food security programming on your campus, please reach out to us. I dropped my email in the chat. I'm happy to chat about it. And we do offer services beyond just the swipe drive programming. We help campus pantry, SNAP enrollment, lots of topics that we know y'all are doing in program. This slide deck and the recording again will be sent to you after this call. But if you haven't already, join us on Slack. There's great conversations happening there where we're chatting with folks, and campuses are chatting with each other to answer hard questions like the ones brought up in the chat today. We learn a lot from each other. We know not every campus is the same, but y'all are experiencing it every day and coming up with creative solutions that everyone can benefit from. In addition, we want to keep having calls like this that have impactful content for you. So that center QR code is a chance for you to give us feedback on today's call and information about what else you'd like to hear about us from. Additionally, when you close out the call today, you'll have an opportunity to take that survey, and we really appreciate any feedback. And then to close us out for next month, we'll be having another swipe session. This one's going to be about successful community partnerships. So we've heard so much from our network this year about folks in your communities that you're partnering with there and they're off. In case y'all can have similar partnerships in your community. So join us on February 11th for that content. And that's all I've got. So thank y'all so much. That was a quick hour. We really appreciate it. We'll stay on for a couple more minutes in case there's some quick questions. Otherwise, email us and we'll see you next time.